Do you want to refactor your old Angular apps to the new Signals APIs, but are finding it difficult to do so? Well, I've got your back, and in this video, I'm going to show you a smart way that you can use to refactor your Angular applications to using the new Signals APIs. It's going to be a walkthrough of doing it live with you on a real-time full-stack chat application. So this is a chat application I built in Angular version 13 when no signals were around, and it is RxJS heavy, so it's using RxJS for the most part. For reactivity, I'm going to show you the code in a bit, but before that, let me just show you how it works. So you can see that we are logged in with two different users here. So I'm going to send a message to Hina here and select it from here. So I'm going to say hello. You can see Hina receives a message here and I can give a reply back. Hi there. Okay, what's up? And it's going to receive a message here, and then you can select another user and send a message there. You also have a profile page here in which you have the profile image, the name, which you can change here like this. So you can save it and the name changes there, and you have a profile page here as well. Then you can log out here as well. You can also sign up with a new user here. Okay. It doesn't have all of the extra features that a chat app has, but it is enough for the basic feature set. And just as an aside, if you like the full code for this application, including the refactored code, you can get it in the link in the description as always, and you can use it in your own project as well or build upon this as you wanted. Any support from you is really helpful in running this channel. Okay, so to refactor any application, any old application to the new Signals APIs, you need to actually know the flow of the application. So let me just start with showing a bit of a flow of this chat application so that we can understand how and why we are changing to Signals, all right? So if you see this diagram here, you have a three-tiered structure here for my application. So the first tier is the Firebase Auth or the Firebase DB, which is the full stack part of the project. And you get the authenticated data here and you get the messages and the chats from the Firestore DB, okay? Then you have a layer of services, okay? It's customary in Angular to keep all of your business logic in a service. So I have an authentication service which keeps your observables related to the user authentication. Then you have a user service which gets the user profile information for that specific authenticated user. And then we have a chat service which actually contains all of the list of the chats for any specific user, including its messages as well. Okay, and then the third layer is then the component layer. Now this is showing just the home component here. As you can see, this is the main component that you see here in this example here. So this is the home component. And you can see that we have variables here, which we are then using the async pipe in the template to show it to the user. So the first is the users, which is actually used here in the autocomplete. So this is the users list. We're using it with the async pipe. Similarly, we have the my chats observable, which is the chats of a specific user. So here we have these two chats which are showing up related to this specific user. All right. And then we have the third thing, which is the messages. So for each the chat that we select, it fetches the messages for that as a messages observable. Okay. So currently, if I show you the code here and if I go in my home component here, you can see that all of these are represented as observables here. And it's all RxJS. You can see that I'm using combine latest here. And you can see that I'm using pipe switch map here in my components as well. So all of it is RxJS based because it is a reactive application and it makes it really easy to create such functionality. But where do you actually start with the refactoring process? So if I want to refactor this chat application, and according to this diagram, there are three tiers that I can do that. Well, what should I prioritize? Since signals were meant to improve change detection in Angular apps, it makes more sense to introduce signals first in the components themselves because change detection happens at the component level. So in our case as well, this is a smart way. We are going to first refactor the component. So we are going to first refactor. So in our case, we are going to first refactor the home component here like this. So once we refactor this home component, then if needed, we can move on to the other layers. This is going to simplify the process of refactoring and give you a head start so that you can then continue along this journey and not feel stuck. Okay, so let's just get right into it. And I have the home component here open here like this. So you can see that we have, first of all, the user observable, which is the referring to the user service current user profile. This is actually the user document that we have stored in Firestore containing the information about the currently logged in user. Okay, so When you have an observable that you're getting from a service, the best way to do that is to use a toSignal function, which is used for RxJS and is provided by the Angular team. So we're going to import this here from Angular core RxJS interop, and I'm going to do toSignal here. And then toSignal we are going to use in a separate variable, which we're going to call as user, because the dollar is a convention that we use for observable. So we're just going to declare a user here like this, and we're going to do toSignal. And then within that, we can just give your observable here like this. Great. And then we can remove this here. Great. And immediately we get some errors here because the user's observable is not present here now. And this is now a signal. Great. Now, if we go down, we have a user here which is giving an error. And if you go down, then we have this also giving an error here because this user is not present. Now, we wouldn't need the combine latest. We'll come to that in a bit. But first, let's refactor the other parts of the component as well. So we have my chats here, which is this .chat service.mychat. So we are going to create a my chats here as well. Let's say my chats, and we're going to use the toSignal here on the my chats service as well. Chat service.mychats. Okay. And we can remove this as well here like this. Great. Okay, so below that we have search control, message control, and chat list control. So we're going to just leave this as it is because it's related to the form. Then we have the messages observable, all right? Now we're going to do this later on. Let's first refactor the other parts that we already have. So first we also have this user service.all users here. Now we have a combine latest here. Now the combine latest is basically used to combine two observables and combine their latest values and get an observable resulting from it. So a natural equivalent to that, if you have converted all of your observables to signals, is the computed, and it's really simple to do. But as you can see, we have the user signal here, but we don't have the all users here. So what we want to do is we want to declare another signal here, all users, and we're going to do toSignal, and we're going to just copy this thing here inside of this. And this is then going to give you the all users as a signal. Okay, great. So now we can just define an other user signal, and we can use a computed for that purpose. Great. So let's just do other users, and let's make it into a computed. Okay. Now this computed is going to, we can just simply do this dot all users, the signal filter, it's just dot fit, and u.uid as it's given above. Now we want to keep the functionality the same, so be mindful of that. So here then we can do the user. This user is basically the user that we have. So we can do this dot user, the signal value, and we can do dot uid here like this. Okay, so this is other users, and now we can remove this other users here like this. Great. Okay, so we also have another combine latest, which is the users. So these are basically the filtered users. Now we can rename this as well to be a bit better. So instead of users, what we can do is we can do filtered users, because this is basically, if I show you here like this, if this autocomplete, if we type something here, you can see that it brings in this list basically is the filtered users observable. But in this case, then what we're going to do is we are going to create the filtered users signal here, and this is also be a computed. Now, a problem with this is that we have the other users. This is also a signal, so we have this other users, but we also have the search control value changes observable. So let's create another signal here at the top here. In fact, after this search control, and let's call this search value. And this is going to be toSignal. And we're just going to copy this search control.value changes .start with here like this. But in fact, we don't need the start with here. So we can actually give an initial value to this as well, like this. So toSignal can give an initial value of the signal, because a signal always has to have an initial value as opposed to an observable which does not need that. So initial value, I'm going to give an empty string. That means there's no filtering happening. Okay, so search value is going to be the value changes of the search control. And now we can build it using that. So we're going to use a computed here. So we're going to return users.filter. So this is other users. Okay, so we're going to do other users. So this dot other users dot filter, and filter is going to be u dot display name, two lowercase dot includes. And now here we have the search string. So instead of the search string, we are going to do this dot search value, which is a string, two lowercase. Okay. So we have our filtered users here in the form of a computed, and you can already see that the code is so much simpler we can directly see where the signals are being used, and we don't need to give any complicated operator here to do a simple thing like filtering. Okay, so we can remove the users here like this. Okay. Okay, then we have a selected chat here. This selected chat basically represents a chat when we click on the chat here like this. So once we click on it, we have a form control which triggers a value, and then it combines it with the my chats that we have loaded from Firestore, and it gets that specific chat so that we can show all of this stuff here, the chat name, the date, etc., the last message date, and all of the other stuff here. So this is basically what is the selected chat observable. So we want to create a signal for this as well. But how do we create that? It's combine latest. So that means that we need to use computed. We do have the my chats as a signal, so that's fine. But we don't have a chat list control value changes. So what we're going to do is we are going to do chat list control we already have. Instead of the chat list control value changes, we're going to do selected chat ID, which just makes more sense if you know about the functionality. So this is going to be to signal, and this is going to have this dot chat list control dot value changes. And as it happens, we actually don't get a value directly from it. So we have to actually use the first array's value here. So we need to use a map here like this. So let's just copy the map here, and we're going to do map value 0. And the initial value is undefined. So if you don't give any initial value, it's going to be undefined, which is fine. Selected chat ID would be undefined initially. Okay. So now we have the selected chat ID. We can use this now in our selected chat here. So let's create a selected chat signal here. And this is going to be a computed. And so here we can just simply use chats.find. So we can do this dot my chats, the value dot find, and let's do c.id is equals to this dot selected chat ID, the value. Okay, so you can see how simpler this is now as opposed to this. It's a bit difficult to gather. Okay, so we have selected chat as a signal as well. Great, so we have converted a lot of our things to signals here, except for the messages, which we are going to come to in a bit. Okay, so we had reached selected chat here. The next ng on in it we are actually defining the messages observable here. Okay, so we need to refactor this, but can this be refactored by just by using a to signal? Well, yeah, we could actually just put all of this observable chain into a to signal, but it seems to be a bit clunky. Okay, now if we analyze this, to signal is really nice for simple observables, you know, but what if we have an observable chain in which a value basically triggers something and then we get another value here? So basically what we're doing here is this. We are using the chat list control, and whenever the chat list control changes, the selected chat changes, it's using switch map, and it's using a get chat messages function, which is giving back the messages observable for our specific chat. And then we are in the tab here scrolling to bottom. So it is sort of a multi-step process here in this case. So when you have a multi-step process here like this, and it's also involving an asynchronous sort of call here using switch map, then best is to use the new resource API in Angular. Okay, so but how do we do that? Well, let's declare a messaging resource here, and let's try to do that. Now, because this is an observable, we are going to use not the resource, but the Rx resource, which is also a part of the RxJS interop. So let's create a messages resource here. Okay, and we are going to do Rx resource here. Let's import that. Rx resource uses an observable. We need to give a stream here like this. This means that whenever the observable emits a value, is going to emit a new value in the messages resource so that we can use it as a signal. So in the stream, where it's really simple, we are just going to do this .chat service .get messages. But let's first give a function here like this, and we can return this .chat service .get chat messages here like this. Okay, but yeah, what happens to the chat ID? So we need it for a specific chat ID. So this is the great thing about a resource, a streaming resource, or in any resource, that we can actually define our dependency or the trigger points for that resource, so that whenever that changes, the resource is automatically going to get refreshed. Okay, so we do that by using the params here like this, and in the params then we can give our selected chat ID. Now remember, this will be a signal here. Okay, we are not using the value, but we are going to specify the signal here, so that whenever the signal changes, this stream is going to get reinitialized and the messages resource is going to get a new value. So here then in the parameters here, we can give params here like this, and above here we use the chat ID And to get that, there is a params within the params, which we need to get the chat ID here, and then we can just pass in the chat ID here like this. But it can also happen initially that the chat ID is not there, or chat ID is undefined, as we can see in our selected chat ID here, that initially we won't have a value changes, so it would be undefined. So what happens in that case? In the resource, we can also specify that case. So we can just simply say, if the chat ID is not there, then we can return os, and we can do a simple array here, okay, because it's a messages thing. So we can just pass in a messages. Great. So I think our resource is ready here. So this resource basically replaces this messages observable. So let's just comment it out for the time being because we don't need it. And we can also remove this messages observable here. And instead of all of this, we can actually just do messages, and this can be messages resource dot value here like this. This is a signal, so we can easily use it in our templates. Okay, great. So we don't have any other observables that we need to use this. Let's save this. But of course, we are going to get a lot of errors because in our templates, we haven't made any change. So in the home.component.html, we're going to go and we're going to resolve this issue here. Okay. So here, instead of using the async pipe, we can now simply use the user's signal here. And there's an issue that it says that there are two users here because users is mat autocomplete as well. So let me just rename to something else. Let's call this users autocomplete. And I'm going to refresh this. Okay, so it says that user of users is not here. So in fact, we need to use filtered users. Yep. We changed the name to this to make more sense, remember? So this is what appears in the autocomplete, and this will be the filtered users. Okay, and then if we go down here, we can see we have the my chats. So instead of the async, we can just simply do my chats, and we can use the signal here. Okay, let's go down. We have the selected chat. So instead of this, we can just simply use selected chat here like this. Okay, yeah, so you can see that it doesn't give a type here properly. And the reason is that we made a mistake here. So we need to use a return here. A computer needs to return something here, okay? So now we get that the issue is resolved here. Okay, so type safety really helps. Okay, so next we are going to see the user here. So this is the current user. So we can just simply use the user signal here. And for the messages, then we can use just the messages here, which uses the messages resource. Okay, great. And everything else seems to be in order. So let's save this and let's see if we get any errors here. So no errors, but we have a warning about the async pipe. So let's just remove the async pipe here because it's not needed anymore here. Okay, so now there's no error. And now let's go back to our chat application and test it out whether our chat application is working as it is. Great. Okay, yeah, so one thing that isn't working, so you can see it's loading the stuff fine. Our autocomplete is working fine here, as you can see. And we are selecting the users here and it's refreshing the chat. But one thing it's not doing is that it's not scrolling to the bottom, okay? Now, if we go back to our code and we see here that we have in this messages observable, you can see at the bottom here, we also have the scroll to bottom here. Okay, now so this scroll to bottom is basically a side effect. So we want this to happen whenever our messages are loaded or messages signal changes, okay? So what we can do is we can use an effect for this purpose. So let's just remove this and let's create an effect. In fact, let's just remove ng on init here and also remove this implements ng on init because we don't need it. And while refactoring to signals, you're going to discover that oftentimes you don't actually need the lifecycle hooks ng on init or ng on changes for the most part, okay? Because everything is handled reactively by signals. So let's create an effect here at the bottom here and let's call this scroll to bottom. Okay, we already have a function here, but we are going to create an effect for this and we're going to just create it in one function here like this. So in an effect, first of all, we need to get the signal that is being tracked, okay? So we are going to get the messages here like this. We're going to say this dot messages, and whenever we get this message, we want this set timeout to be called here. So we're going to control C here, and we're going to do this. But we're also going to see if we do have any messages, because initially we might not have a message here, or we might have just an initial empty message. We don't want it to run it in that case. Okay, so let's check if we have messages and also if we have a length. Okay, and only then we want to scroll to the bottom here. So what we can do is then we can just copy this set timeout thing here and let's do it like this. Okay, so the rest of the stuff is basically just getting the end of the chat as a div and then scrolling to that in a smooth way so that we can see that. Okay, so scroll to bottom is here. Now we can remove this function. We don't need it. And also we're using this scroll to bottom in subscription when we are adding a chat message. So this is a bit of an imperative code here. But since we have refactored to signals, we actually don't need this anymore. So we can just remove this and we can just do subscribe here just like this, because as soon as the messages are added in the chat, the messages signal is going to change, is going to get a new value. And as soon as it gets a new value, it's going to scroll in any case. So we don't actually need to do it explicitly when we add a new message. Okay, so let's check out whether this works. And let's now see, go back to our application here and we click on our chat application. You can see that it scrolls down perfectly. And if we send a message here like this, it scrolls down automatically as well. If we send a message here, it scrolls down message as well. And then also, if we check it on another browser here like this, we can see that if we try out sending a message from here, it gets a new message from here and it automatically scrolls to the bottom here. Great. So you can already see that it has improved the code flow. Great. So our home component now, at least, has all signals. So this is a good starting point for your own applications as well. Now I do have other components as well, and one by one I can reward all of them, but it uses the same strategy that I used here. I'm not going to show you all of the components, but you can get the final code in the link in the description if you are more interested in checking it out. Now, so this is the starting point. The next step, if you would like, and it is an optional step, you can also go on and refactor your services. So if you go in on our services here, you can see the chat service here. Everything is an observable. You have my chats, which is an observable. You have is existing chat. This is also an observable. And you have get chat messages, which is an observable as well. So all of these things you can refactor to using signals as well. But as a first step, the component refactoring is an absolute must for you if you are refactoring to signals, and is a smart way to go about it. Now, in the final code, I have everything refactored to using, including the services, to using signals. And if you want, you could check it out. But if you'd like me to create a walkthrough for that as well, and do hit me up in the comments, and I will consider creating another video just for the service layer of this application, because it requires a few more things to get right. So I hope this video is going to help you in refactoring your own Angular apps to using Angular signals and embrace the future of Angular. If you have any comments and suggestions, do let me know and I will accommodate it in my next videos. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time with another interesting video.